The space station floated in the cold silence of deep space, far away from busy trade routes. Only a few ships came here, and most of them were in need of repairs. Ethan, a human engineer, worked alone in his small repair bay, fixing a damaged cargo ship's engine. It was past midnight, and the station's corridors were quiet, except for the distant hum of the life support systems. Ethan wiped the sweat from his forehead. Leaning back against the workbench, he was used to long nights. But something about tonight felt different. The air felt heavier, and the silence seemed too deep. He was about to return to work when he heard the sound, soft footsteps, quick and uneven, echoing down the corridor. He frowned. No one was supposed to be here at this hour. The footsteps grew louder, and then she appeared, a girl, but not human. Her skin was pale with a faint silver glow, and strange blue lines pulsed along her arms and neck. Her long hair, the color of starlight, hung loosely around her shoulders, and her golden eyes darted around as if she was being chased. She stumbled into the repair bay, clutching her side, breathing hard. Before Ethan could speak, she collapsed to her knees. "Please, help me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Reset the timer before sunrise." Ethan froze. Timer? Sunrise? What was she talking about? He stepped forward cautiously, kneeling beside her. Her skin felt cold, almost lifeless, and the glowing lines on her body flickered weakly like a dying signal. "I don't understand," he said, his voice low. "Who are you? What's happening to you?" She looked at him with desperate eyes. "I'll die if we don't." "Do the ritual," she said, her words broken by gasps. "Every 24 hours, it must be done, or my heart stops." Ethan shook his head, thinking maybe she was delirious, but her trembling hands gripped his arm tightly. "I'm not lying," she said. "Please, you must help me. There's no one else." Before Ethan could respond, an alarm blared through the station. A deep red light flashed along the walls. He recognized the sound. It was the security alert. Someone had forced entry into the docking bay. The girl's eyes widened with fear. "They found me," she whispered. "They can't catch me before the ritual, or it's over." Ethan glanced at the door, hearing heavy boots approaching. His instincts told him he should stay out of trouble. He didn't even know this alien girl, and yet there was something in her voice, something in her eyes. She wasn't lying. "All right," he said quickly. "Come on, we need to hide." She tried to stand but stumbled again, her legs too weak. Ethan grabbed her arm, pulling her toward a side room filled with tools and spare ship parts. They slipped inside just as shadows passed the open doorway. Through the small gap, Ethan saw them, tall figures in black armor, moving with precision. Their helmets had narrow glowing visors, and they carried strange weapons that hummed with energy. They scanned the room with handheld devices, searching for something or someone. Ethan held his breath, keeping the girl close behind a stack of crates. The armored aliens paused near the doorway. One of them spoke in a deep, metallic voice. "She's here. Her life signature is fading. We don't have much time." Ethan felt the girl trembling beside him. He glanced at her. Her glowing lines were dimming even more. Her breathing was shallow, and her hand pressed over her chest. She whispered so quietly he almost didn't hear. "If they take me, I won't live." The aliens moved on, their heavy steps fading down the corridor. Ethan let out the breath he'd been holding. He looked at the girl, his mind racing. He had no idea who she was, or why armed soldiers were after her, but he knew one thing. If he left her now, she would die. "All right," he said firmly. "Tell me exactly what this ritual is, and where we have to go." Her golden eyes locked on his, filled with both fear and hope. "It's dangerous," she whispered, "and if we fail, it will kill us both." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine, but before he could reply, the alarm blared again, louder this time. The station's automated voice echoed through the speakers. "Warning, intruders detected in maintenance sector. All personnel evacuate immediately." Ethan glanced toward the door, then back at her. He didn't know why he was about to risk his life for a stranger, but something told him that whatever this was, it was bigger than both of them. "Let's go," he said, helping her to her feet. Her steps were unsteady, but she leaned on him. Somewhere deep inside, Ethan knew that from this moment forward, his quiet life on the station was over, and the countdown to sunrise had already begun. Ethan guided the alien girl through the dimly lit corridors of the station. The alarm's red glow flashed across the metal walls, casting strange shadows that seemed to follow them. Her breathing was fast, and every few steps she stumbled. He could feel how weak she was, and the faint glow in her skin was fading with every minute. They stopped in a small storage bay, far from the main path. Ethan helped her sit on a crate, trying to catch his own breath. "All right, you need to tell me what's going on," he said, his voice urgent but steady. "No more half answers. I need the full truth." She nodded slowly, as if gathering her strength. "My name is Leora," she began. "My people. We are bound to a cycle. Every 24 hours we must perform a ritual to keep our life force alive. If we miss it, the heart slows, the mind fades, and then," she hesitated. "Death," Ethan blinked. It sounded unbelievable, like something from an old spacer's tale, but he couldn't ignore what he had seen. The strange glow in her skin, the panic in her eyes, the way she seemed to be dying right in front of him. "Why can't you just do it yourself?" Ethan asked. "Why do you need someone else?" Leora's eyes shifted away. "The ritual cannot be done alone," she said quietly. "It needs two life forces, connected, one to anchor the energy and one to guide it. It's intimate and dangerous. If the bond is broken during the ritual, both lives can be lost." Ethan felt the weight of her words. "So you're saying that if I help you, I'm risking my life too?" he asked. She nodded, her golden eyes meeting his again. "I would not ask if I had any other choice," before Ethan could reply. A deep metallic voice echoed from somewhere in the distance. "Sector sweep complete. Life signature is close." The hunters were getting nearer again. Leora's hand gripped his wrist suddenly. "They can't know about the ritual," she said urgently. "They will kill you too if they learn you helped me." Ethan took a slow breath. He didn't understand all of this, but he knew one thing. Those armored soldiers weren't here to rescue her. They were here to end her. "How much time do we have before?" He hesitated. "Before you can't be saved?" She looked down, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Less than 3 hours." Ethan's stomach tightened. 3 hours to find wherever this ritual had to be done, to figure out how to perform it, and to do it while running from heavily armed aliens. It sounded impossible, but something in him refused to give up. "All right," he said, his voice firm. "Tell me where we need to go." Leora closed her eyes for a moment, as if remembering the path. "There is a chamber in the old maintenance sector, deep in the station's lower levels," she said. "It's hidden. Few even know it exists. The energy there is ancient." Ethan frowned. The old maintenance sector was abandoned years ago, sealed off after a reactor leak. Most people avoided it, claiming the place felt cursed. If the chamber was there, it meant they had to cross one of the most dangerous and unstable parts of the station. The sound of metal boots grew louder. There was no more time to think. Ethan pulled her to her feet. "Then we better start moving." They slipped into a narrow service tunnel, the walls lined with dusty cables and flickering lights. Leora leaned on him as they moved, her steps growing slower. Ethan could feel her life slipping away with each passing minute. Somewhere behind them, the hunters' voices echoed through the tunnel. "Target is moving. Intercept route initiated." Ethan's mind raced. He had no idea what this ritual would demand of him, or if he would even survive it. But right now, the only thing that mattered was reaching that hidden chamber before the clock ran out. And somewhere deep inside, he couldn't shake the feeling that this ritual, whatever it was, would change both their lives forever. The service tunnel twisted and turned like a maze. the air thick with the smell of old metal and dust. Ethan's boots crunched against debris while Leora leaned heavily on his arm. Her breathing shallow, her glowing lines had dimmed to a faint flicker, like the last ember of a dying fire. They had to move faster, but every step seemed to drain her strength. Finally, they reached a rusted hatch at the end of the tunnel. "This is it," Leora whispered, her voice weak but certain. Ethan spun the wheel lock and forced the door open with a groan of metal. Beyond it was a dark circular chamber, the walls covered in strange carvings and symbols that glowed faintly in the shadows. The air felt different here, heavy, charged with an unseen energy that made Ethan's skin prickle. In the center of the room stood a low stone platform, its surface etched with the same glowing lines that ran through Leora's skin. She let go of his arm and staggered toward it, her hand brushing across the carvings. "The Heartstone," she murmured. "It's still alive." Ethan glanced around uneasily. "What do I have to do?" he asked. Leora turned to him, her golden eyes serious despite her weakness. "You must link your life force to mine. The bond will open the Heartstone and feed it. But once we begin, we cannot stop, not for anything." Her words echoed in his mind. Not for anything. What happens if we stop? He asked, already knowing the answer. "We both die," she said simply. Ethan swallowed hard. "All right, let's do it," he said, trying to hide the nervous edge in his voice. Leora stepped onto the platform and held out her hands. Ethan joined her, feeling the stone under his boots pulse faintly like a living thing. The moment their hands touched, a rush of heat shot through him. It wasn't painful, more like standing too close to a powerful engine. The carvings on the stone flared brighter, and the lines on Leora's skin began to glow again. "Repeat after me," she said, her voice steady now. She spoke words in a language Ethan had never heard before, soft, melodic, yet heavy with meaning. He stumbled through them, his voice rough compared to hers, but each syllable seemed to vibrate through the chamber. The glow spread from their joined hands into the Heartstone, sending streams of light up the walls. Suddenly, a deep thud echoed from somewhere beyond the chamber. Ethan's eyes flipped toward the door. "They've found us," he whispered. Leora's grip tightened. "Don't stop," she warned. "No matter what you hear." The sounds outside grew louder, boots pounding, weapons charging, voices shouting in that cold metallic tone. The chamber shook as something heavy slammed into the hatch. Ethan's heartbeat raced, but he kept repeating the strange words, feeling the energy building around them. The glow in the chamber grew so bright, it was almost blinding. Leora's breathing steadied, her posture straightening as the light seemed to pour into her. Ethan felt some of his own strength draining, but he didn't let go. The hatch burst open with a crash, armored hunters flooding into the room. Ethan's instinct screamed at him to fight or run, but Leora's voice cut through the chaos. "Stay with me," she said firmly. "We're almost there." One of the hunters raised a weapon, aiming straight at them. A beam of energy shot forward and struck the glowing field surrounding the platform. Shattering into sparks, the Heartstone pulsed once, twice, and then released a wave of blinding light that threw the hunters back. When the light faded, the chamber was silent. Leora's glow was strong again, her eyes bright and alive. She looked at Ethan with something like gratitude and something else he couldn't quite name. "You saved my life," she said softly. Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. The glow from the Heartstone faded slowly, leaving only the faint light of the carvings along the walls. Ethan could still feel the strange warmth in his hands where Leora had held them, but there was no time to think about what had just happened. The metallic footsteps outside were getting closer again, steady and relentless. "They'll be back," Leora whispered, her eyes scanning the shadows. "They won't stop until they take me." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Then we move before they regroup," he said, offering her his hand. She hesitated for a moment before taking it. As they stepped off the platform, Ethan noticed scorch marks on the floor where the hunters had stood before being thrown back by the ritual's light. It hadn't killed them, just slowed them down, and now they would be furious. They slipped through a side passage at the back of the chamber. A narrow tunnel with uneven walls that looked far older than the rest of the station. The air was colder here, and Ethan's breath came out in faint white puffs every few steps. He could hear faint clinks of metal behind them, the hunters. "We're tracking their movements. Why are they after you?" Ethan asked quietly. Liara's voice was tense. "They are my own people," she admitted. "But they serve the council, and the council fears me." "Why?" Ethan pressed. "Because I know the truth about the ritual," she said. "And the truth could destroy their power." Before Ethan could ask more, a flash of light filled the tunnel. An energy blast hit the wall just inches from his head, showering. Them with sparks, the hunters were closer than he thought. Their glowing visors cutting through the dark. Ethan pulled Liara into a side alcove, his mind racing. He had no weapons except for a wrench clipped to his belt. And fighting these armored soldiers head-on was suicide. But running wasn't much. Better, Liara was still weak despite the ritual. And the hunters moved faster than any human. Another blast hit the tunnel wall, sending vibrations through the floor. "They're hurting us," Ethan realized. "They're pushing us toward the docking bay." Liara's face tightened. "If they take me off this station, I'll never be free again," she said, her voice trembling. Ethan looked down the passage and spotted a maintenance hatch. It was small, barely big enough for them to crawl through. But it led to the old ventilation system, a maze of hidden paths. "This way," he said, yanking the hatch open. They climbed inside, just as the hunters' heavy steps pounded into the corridor. They had just left. Ethan slid the hatch shut, holding his breath as the hunters' voices echoed outside. "Target is near. Proceed with sweep." Inside the ventilation shaft, the light was dim and the air smelled of oil and dust. Ethan led the way, the metal creaking softly under his weight. Liara followed close behind, her movements quiet and careful. Every sound seemed louder in the narrow space. Their breathing, the distant hum of engines, the faint tapping of armored boots below. They moved deeper into the vents until they reached a grate overlooking one of the station's cargo holds. Through it, Ethan saw a terrifying sight. More hunters, at least a dozen, unloading heavy crates and setting up strange devices that pulsed with blue energy. Liara's eyes widened in fear. "They're building a field to trap us," she whispered. "If they finish, we'll have nowhere to run." Ethan's mind worked quickly. If they couldn't escape through the docking bay, they have to find another hidden path, maybe one that led to the station's outer hull. But one thing was clear. The hunters weren't just after Liara's capture. They were turning the entire station into a cage. The narrow vent was stifling, every breath hot and heavy. Ethan could feel the vibrations in the metal as the hunters moved through the station. Their boots pounding like war drums. Below them, in the cargo hold, the strange blue devices pulsed faster, sending thin arcs of light between them. The energy field was growing, stretching like an invisible net. "We can't stay here," Ethan whispered. "If that field closes, we're trapped." Liara nodded weakly, but Ethan could see the glow on her skin dimming again. The ritual had bought her time, but not much. Her hands trembled as she steadied herself against the vent wall. "How long before you need the next ritual?" Ethan asked, already fearing the answer. Liara's voice was faint. "Less than a day. Maybe 20 hours. Ethan clenched his jaw. That meant every injury, every delay could be fatal. They crawled further until the vent opened into a maintenance deck. The space was cluttered with old machinery, loose cables, and spare parts scattered across the floor. The station's power core hummed in the distance. It gave Ethan an idea. "If I can tap into the emergency circuits, I can overload those field generators, buy us a way out." Liara's eyes flickered with hope. "Can you do it?" she asked. Ethan gave a half smile. "Only if I don't get shot in the process." He set to work, pulling open a control panel and connecting a bundle of wires. But the systems here were ancient, built before half the current crew had even been born. Every connection was corroded, every switch stiff with age. Sweat rolled down his neck as he worked, the sound of footsteps echoing closer. Ethan. Leora's voice was urgent now. He looked up to see a faint shimmer in the air, creeping through the maintenance deck like a slow tide. The blue energy field was here, its edges crackling as it expanded. If it touched them, the hunters would know their exact location. Almost there, Ethan muttered, forcing the wires into place. A sharp spark shot out, stinging his hand, but the control panel lit up with a dull green glow. Got it, he said, flipping the override. Somewhere below, the field generators gave a high-pitched whine before one of them exploded in a burst of light. The shimmer in the air faded, but only for a moment. It was already beginning to reform. They'll fix it fast, Leora said. We need to move now. They ran, weaving through the narrow catwalks above the power core. The air was hotter here, the hum of energy loud enough to make Ethan's teeth buzz. Below them, the hunters' visors glowed like tiny red stars in the shadows, tracking their every step as they reached another hatch. Leora stumbled, nearly collapsing. Ethan caught her before she hit the floor. Her glow was dangerously faint now, and her breathing shallow. How far? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan glanced at the station map flickering on the wall. If we can get to the outer maintenance ring, there's a safe spot, but it's a long way. The thud of metal boots echoed closer, faster. Now Ethan tightened his grip on Leora's arm. No choice, he said. We run. They pushed through the hatch, disappearing into the dark maze of the station's lowest levels. But Ethan knew the truth. Their time wasn't just running out, it was almost gone. Asterisk, the lowest levels of the station were a labyrinth of darkness and decay. Pipes hissed with bursts of steam, loose cables hung like vines, and the floor vibrated with the deep thrum of the station's core. Ethan's flashlight beam cut through the shadows, revealing patches of rust and warning signs long faded with age. Every few steps he glanced over his shoulder, listening for the hunters. Leora leaned heavily on him, her steps slow and uneven. Her glow was now just a faint shimmer under her skin, almost gone. How much time? Ethan asked. She didn't answer at first, her breath shallow. Finally she whispered, "Less than 10 minutes." Ethan's heart pounded. 10 minutes to find a safe place, set up the ritual, and complete it. If they failed, there wouldn't be a second chance. They turned a corner and stumbled into a massive chamber filled with old machinery. In the center, half buried under metal debris, was a platform etched with glowing lines, smaller than the first Heartstone, but alive with faint energy. This could work, Leora said, her voice trembling. It's not meant for the ritual, but it will hold. If we're fast. Ethan dropped his bag and started clearing debris from the platform, his hands moving quickly despite the sting of metal shards cutting his skin. Leora knelt, her weak fingers tracing the carvings, whispering words in her language. The air seemed to hum in response, the glow in the lines growing a little brighter. Then the sound came, the unmistakable clang of boots on metal. Echoing through the corridors, the hunters had found them, and they were close. "Start it," Ethan said. Stepping onto the platform, Leora took his hands, her grip trembling but firm. The moment they touched, the glow surged, wrapping around them like a cocoon of light. Ethan felt the same pull as before, energy rushing between them, but this time, it was harder. The platform's power was unstable, flickering like a dying flame. He began repeating the words she taught him, his voice steady, even as the hunters appeared in the doorway, weapons raised. Energy blasts sizzled through the air, striking the invisible barrier around the platform. The force shook Ethan's arms, nearly breaking their connection. "Don't let go," Leora urged, her voice urgent. "They can't break the bond unless you let them." The hunters advanced, their weapons glowing hotter. One of them fired a sustained beam, and the barrier cracked, a thin line of light splitting across it. Ethan's muscles burned from the strain, the heat from the weapon washing over him. But he kept going, forcing the words out, feeling the ritual fight to stay alive. The glow from the carvings spread faster now, flooding the room with blinding light. Leora's strength began to return, her glow bright and steady. The barrier shattered with a deafening crack, and hunters rushed forward, but the ritual reached its peak, unleashing a wave of force that blasted them backward into the walls. Ethan dropped to his knees, gasping for breath. Leora knelt beside him, her hands on his shoulders. "You did it," she said softly, but Ethan could see in her eyes that this wasn't the end, because now the hunters knew exactly what he could do, and they wouldn't stop until they had both of them. The room was silent except for the faint crackle of dying energy in the air. Smoke curled from the damaged weapons, scattered across the floor, the hunters groaning as they tried to rise. Ethan still knelt on the platform, his hands trembling. From the strain of the ritual, Leora stood tall now, her golden eyes glowing brighter than ever. Her breathing calm and steady, she reached down, helping him to his feet. "You risked everything for me," she said quietly, her voice carrying a weight he didn't understand yet. Ethan shook his head. "You would have done the same," he replied, but deep down he wasn't so sure. The faint hum of the heartstone faded into the silence. Leora glanced at it, then back at Ethan. "You think this ritual is only about keeping me alive," she said, her tone serious. "But there's more, much more." Ethan frowned. "What are you talking about?" She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "The energy we created. It doesn't just restore life," she said. "It's a power source. When so strong it could sustain an entire human colony for years." Her gaze darkened. "That's why the council wants me. They want to control the energy, and anyone who can make it." Ethan's stomach sank. "If what you're saying is true, they'll never stop hunting you." "They won't," Leora agreed. "And now, because you helped me, they'll hunt you too." He looked at her, the truth settling in like cold metal. He had gone from a quiet engineer fixing ships in a forgotten corner of space to the only human alive who could perform the ritual, the only one who could create that energy with her. The sound of distant footsteps echoed again, faint but growing. Leora's eyes darted toward the door. "We have to leave," she said. Ethan nodded slowly. "Where?" She gave him a small knowing smile. "Somewhere the council will never find us," she said, "but it's dangerous, and we'll be running for the rest of our lives." Ethan took a deep breath. The choice was already made. "Then let's run," he said. Side by side, they slipped out through the shadowed passage, leaving the flickering glow of the heartstone behind. Somewhere in the darkness ahead, the countdown to the next ritual had already begun.